So Prashanta, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But
Thank you, Dr. Nick. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
You're welcome, and it's great to have you on the show. And before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Sure, Dr. Nick. So I grew up in a very small town in northern KwaZulu-Natal. So in a little farm town, and then I came to the city of Johannesburg.
And tell us, Prashanta, what was your dream career when you were growing up?
Yeah. So Dr. Nick, initially, I really dreamed about becoming a teacher. I admired how some of the great teachers that I had ignited curiosity, they built confidence, and, they really helped believe in potential. But then in grade 8, I discovered accounting and I got hooked by its discipline, by problem solving, and a strategic lens of how organizations work. And I think, right then when I was in grade 8, I realized that numbers was just not measures. It was a language for decisions and value creations. So, my dream didn't change. I think of it as evolving. So it went from, teaching in a classroom, to now teaching, leading, and empowering in finance.
And tell us, Prashanta, who inspired you in your early days?
Yeah, Dr. Nick, I mean, sometimes it sounds cliched, but it's definitely my parents who inspired me to reach for the stars. Like I said, I grew up in a small town called Dundee in KZN. My parents weren't wealthy in a financial sense, but, they were rich in belief, in values, and in encouragement. They raised three, so I've got three siblings, two siblings. So they raised us three girls with, the freedom to dream, the confidence to try, and, most importantly, the resilience never to give up. So I always, every milestone that I've achieved, I think it's because of their quiet strength, the sacrifices they made, and their unwavering support.
And tell us, Prashanta, today you're one of the leading CFOs in South Africa. Looking back over your career, was there a turning point or maybe a number of turning points that took your career in a certain direction?
So Nick, there were a few, but when I reflected on this, I think, the turning point that had the most impactful difference was a couple of years ago. I made a deliberate decision, to leave a role in which I was highly effective and comfortable. So I was leading a high-performing, multi-geographical treasury and capital management team across Africa. So it was 18 markets at that time. And, at that moment, I chose exposure over comfort. I was quite technical, so I traded the depth for breadth of experience. And there wasn't certainty. I mean, moving from treasury and capital management into a CFO role, it's different. But looking back, I think what it taught me, and it's a lesson that stuck with me, that true leadership, really comes from staying in that comfort zone. It comes from stepping into uncertainty, learning in real time, and embracing challenges that stretch your perspective. Growth really comes from discomfort. And I know that there's a quote that I love, John Maxwell. And, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So for me, I think that forced, that change, forced like intentional stepping out of my comfort zone and growing further.
Thank you. And Prashanta, what would you say is driving you today? What is energizing you? What is motivating you every single day?
Uh, Dr. Nick, so what drives me today? I think it's the pursuit of growth and impact. And the way I think about it is, we won. So whether it's work or family, that drives me. So, professionally, I'm quite passionate about creating value that lasts. Whether it's in my traditional finance role, or whether it's as a sponsor of diversity and inclusion, I'm really passionate about creating that value. And I also enjoy sharing knowledge, and opening doors for others. I mean, when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of coaches and mentors and stuff like that. So that pursuit of growth and impact is important to me. And I guess on a personal level, I'm a mom of two amazing boys. And, I'm driven by the responsibility of being a role model to them. And I want them to learn that success is not about just it's about achievement. It's about the character, it's about humility, and it's about the contribution they make. And, I always have been a believer that, leadership is courageous, but it's also compassionate and it's ambitious and it's grounded. So that's the stuff that I like to, it energizes me, and I'd like to do that both personally and professionally.
Now, Prashanta, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Uh, so, Dr. Nick, I think for me, it's pretty much the same. I just think certain things are amplified. So, courage is at the core of leadership. And I think courage to act with conviction in the face of uncertainty. And I think what's happening globally, um, geopolitically, just tells us how important courage is. Courage to challenge the status quo and the courage to lead with integrity, even when things are uncomfortable. So, I always think, that courage is universal, and we need it. Leaders of the futures will need it as well. And then, how to lead with heart. Um, I think trust, connection, meaning, it matters as much as strategy and results. So you need to foster relationships that inspire loyalty and foster that belonging. The future of leadership is also about developing others. So not creating a dependence or a reliance on you, but developing others. And I always say leadership is it's authentic and personal. Everybody is a leader in their own right, and it's important for you to be authentic and be consistent. Because the ambition and the humility can coexist. I think how you lead as a leader matters. It's just not about what you achieve, it's how you achieve it. And I think there's lots of pressure globally in South Africa for competence with a conscience. So, leaders are, have to create value, but they need to do that in a meaningful way for shareholders, for employees, for clients, for society. And this whole thing about purpose, as opposed to authority, is so important. And I guess the last thing is adaptability. I was reading a while back a Harvard global leadership development study, and it said about 68% of executives globally ranked adaptability as the most critical skill. So I think with what's happening now, so much of uncertainty globally, that, we have to have that, we have to learn adaptability.
Thank you. And Prashanta, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building and developing future leaders?
So, Dr. Nick, when I look back at my journey, I think the lessons that shaped me didn't arrive in like a grand, cinematic moment. It arrived over time. It came quietly through discipline, through risk, and then through the people that believed in me. So, I'm a big believer is that excellence is a daily choice. When you're younger, you think about excellence in terms of big wins, so whether it's the promotion or the recognition. And, I've learned over the years that it's not about that one big moment. Excellence is like a quiet discipline of doing the right thing every day and doing that brilliantly. It's the way you show up when nobody's watching, and that builds your credibility as a leader. I've also learned that, hard work opens doors for you, but trust keeps you there. So, hard work will get you a seat at the table, but, people need to trust you in order for you to grow as a leader. So, doing your best consistently with integrity, it earns the confidence of others. And that trust is actually the foundation of opportunity that comes in your career. I mentioned earlier about stepping out of your comfort zone. I really believe that courage, isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward despite that fear. So, leaving your comfort zone does increase your capacity to lead. I think trust, and if you see what's happening in the world, is probably the most valuable currency when it comes to leadership, trust and integrity. And then, I think it's also leaders that help empower you. So I remember when I was in Treasury and Capital Management, I had a boss who, at that point, I thought empowered me too quickly. He would ask me, to attend very senior meetings. And, initially I was quite terrified. But, I realized that, firstly, he was empowering. He didn't build dependence on him, but he built capability in me. So, it's always, your leaders that have belief in you that help you grow. And I think, you mustn't be obsessed with the title because roles evolve and, your impact is more important. So I'm a big believer of paying it forward, lifting as you rise, and I'm quite passionate about that. And I think as I conclude, Dr. Nick, at Standard Bank, we've got this habits framework. And, I think for me, it captures the essence of leadership, and I often have it at my desk. And it talks about 3 habits that all of our leaders should have and should practice daily. The first one is acting with courage. The second one is inspiring excellence. And the third one is delivering with purpose. And, under each habit, there's certain behaviors that you need to mimic. And I think, if we can all do a little bit more of that, the future of leadership is in really good hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as you said, Prashanta, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. In your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges future leaders are likely to encounter in their career?
Yeah. So I think, Dr. Nick, it's very similar to what we're currently facing. So I think top on the list, and I mean, it was on the forefront at Davos, it's navigating and leading through constant change. I mean, the geopolitical change is happening at such a fast pace, trade wars, tariffs, economic volatility. So we've got to navigate through that change, but still drive performance. So, it talks to how do you balance the performance with the purpose? And, leaders have to make sure that that profit and purpose can coexist. I think another challenge is the multi-generational workforce. Even with our diversity and inclusion forum, there's a big focus on, you know, multi-generations and how to be effective working across the generations. A key topic at Davos was definitely AI, so I can't not but mention that. But I think lots of businesses are getting pressure to say, you need to do more with AI. So whilst AI is going to inform decisions, it's not going to replace accountability. So, I think the big thing for future leaders is, when do you rely on data? And, when does the human values override that efficiency of data? I think there's always a challenge around personal authenticity. I think with everything happening in the world, leaders have to be good role models. They've got to perform, persuade, even when the spotlight is harsh. And there's a big focus on leaders and well-being. I think, we've seen that, personal resilience is so important. Burnout is real. Yeah, so Dr. Nick, those are some of the themes I could highlight.
Thank you. Now, as a mentor to many future leaders, Prashanta, can you maybe share a success story where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, Dr. Nick, I'm really passionate about paying it forward. I was a graduate, so I did my articles many years ago at APSA. And, now I'm privileged to have those graduates in my portfolio. So, I try to mentor a lot of them. And most importantly, I learn a lot from the reverse mentoring. But, a story that stands out, there's a lovely lady called Michaela, and she was on the CA graduate program many years ago. I was still in Treasury and Capital Management, and she rotated in my area. She was talented, right attitude, willingness to learn and grow, brilliant technically, and, very reliable. So I really took her under my wing and mentored and coached her. And then when she finished the program, I was a CFO in one of the business areas in the bank. And, I hired her to work in my team. And she was just amazing in terms of the energy and the willingness to learn and grow. And then, like it happens in corporates, there was a restructure in our area. And, that comes with lots of uncertainty and stuff. And, we had to find her a different job. And she moved into Treasury and Capital Management. So she's actually working in my old team that I used to lead. And she just, Treasury is quite technical. It's an incredibly steep learning curve, but she just, takes on the challenge. We sit and we chat about, how to navigate. And, she did so well. She was nominated for a Mark of Excellence. So at Standard Bank, Mark of Excellence is, you've made it when you win these awards. And now what's amazing is she's paying it forward. So she's mentoring other grads. And the most powerful gift you can give somebody is to believe in them. And that's how they step into their spotlight. And she stepped into her spotlight and adding so much value with the younger grads now.
And tell us, Prashanta, are there any role models of leadership who you have encountered in your career or maybe in your learning journey who you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
Yeah, so there's so many. I love reading, and I love reading up on leaders from different backgrounds and diverse industries. So I think, being South African, Nelson Mandela is the obvious one. Moral courage, looking at long-term unity versus short-term power. We recently, I did a course at INSEAD, and, even when you look at the greatest communicators of all time, he ranks there. So I think, that's quite inspiring. I personally also love Indra Nui. So she's the ex-PepsiCo CE. I loved her book. It was called My Life is Full. And, she often references these 4 C's of leadership. So it's competence, courage, communication, and compassion. And I think that's so important. I like to add the 5th one, which is consistency, because I think that's so important. Satya Nadella from Microsoft, I guess, that growth mindset is something we all need to build. But, closer to home, I was quite fortunate, Dr. Nick, in having worked for 4 South African CEs at Standard Bank. So it was Lungisa Fazile, Kenny Fiedler, Sim Shabalala, and now it's David Hotnett. And I think it's remarkable leaders, inspirational, authentic leaders that every day you learn from. So, and I think it's not only these great leaders. I watched a podcast that covered Roger Federer when he did commencement address at, I think it was Dartmouth College. And, he said, like, effortless is a myth. And, for somebody who plays tennis, I thought it was so valuable. And he also said, resting quickly after losing a point is so important, or reacting quickly. And, life is bigger than the court. So I guess the point that I'm making is, whether it's a graduate, whether it's your immediate boss, there's leaders all around us that we can learn and grow from.
Now, Preshanta, where can our listeners follow you, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so Dr. Nick, that's definitely still work in progress for me. So, I do have a LinkedIn account, which I occasionally post on. I do talks at, like, for instance, the CFO communities in SA and in Africa. But, it's something I'm still working on.
And last but not least, Preshanta, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are looking to finish school, or who have just finished school and are looking to start their career, to enter the world of work? What are maybe 1 or 2 success principles that they should keep in mind?
So I think it's a theme, throughout, is that excellence isn't one big win. It's about showing up consistently and doing the right thing brilliantly every day. And it's so important to commit to continuous learning. So, the act of learning and unlearning and relearning and having that growth mindset is so important. So, even if you schedule 15 minutes daily to reflect, to learn and grow, it's so important. And then lastly, I think, leadership is not a destination. It's a daily practice of becoming better. And all of us are doing that. We're learning and we're evolving. I think John F. Kennedy said, leadership and learning is indispensable. Yeah, so, that's what I would leave you with, Dr. Nick.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Preshanta, for sharing your leadership journey and your insights into the future of leadership, and reminding us that hard work, I think you said hard work earns you a seat at the table, but earning trust is really what keeps you there, right?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nick. I appreciate the time, and it's been a privilege.